This video is sponsored by Primate Pool Tools. Use promo code POOLPROS2020 to get $15 off. So as far as like the retirement aspect of it, tried to get them to understand, okay, you got to save some money. You got to put some money somewhere else. Yeah. You can't just survive off your, your monthly service account income. You need to put it somewhere else because someday you might get hurt. You might be done. And so what are you going to do? So I'm trying to get them to buy houses. That's a tough debate right now. Is it the right time to buy a house right now or not? But that's kind of my mentality. I'm not just saying, hey, go service pools and be the best pool service provider you can. I want this to take care of their family because it really can. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. I joke about it all the time because my job's a joke. Yeah. It's easy. It's for what I do. I make pretty good money.
Absolutely.
Not a millionaire, but
yeah,
like you said, just went on a cruise and, I can go ride my dirt bike after work. Yeah. Pretty easy, especially once we start getting light. Right now it's like you can start getting up earlier and smashing your day out pretty quick. It's a pretty nice lifestyle.
It definitely is. You own your own business. You had a little bit of a pool business in the past. It didn't work out. You're running your own business now. Do you have employees, or you're the sole employee of the business? Or tell me a little bit about how you got your business going.
So I started this go again, about a year and a half ago. It'll be 2 years in July, at the end of the July. So last summer I had one guy working for me, kind of try that out and made some mistakes here and there. And he was only going to be a temporary guy anyways. He was going on to the fire department, so he just needed a temporary job. So there's some things I'm changing. So I just hired another guy. So I was, the first guy moved on to the fire department, and I was just doing it all on my own again for a while, and just hired another guy about 2 weeks ago, and he's just kind of tagging along with me right now, trying to figure it all out.
How long was the other guy with you?
Maybe 5 months.
Okay.
But it was through the summer, so it was hard 5 months for him.
Do you focus a lot on your numbers? Do you understand the money coming in versus the money going out, the expenses of employment and all that?
I would say I try. I'm getting better at it, but not as much as I should. So I actually just got Pool Brain, which really helps. There's a couple programs out there. Everyone likes different things, but this one seems to be working for me pretty good, and I like how it tracks all your chemical costs to pretty small numbers and everything, and just trying to get a better handle on all that.
Awesome. You're servicing pools, and you also have a tile cleaning position or rig out there. Okay. Yeah. How many pools are you servicing?
I do 50 pools a week.
Okay. And how did you acquire those pools coming in a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago?
So I picked them up originally. The first couple was I was just figuring out what I wanted to do next after making a career change. I was just kind of floating, and some people knew from the past that I did pools, and they kind of just fell in my lap, just a couple of them. And then I ended up buying a small route, about 15 pools, and that was when I was like, okay, let's go do this. So I picked up a couple just from word of mouth, bought about 15, and then from 15 on, mostly word of mouth, Instagram, and then, going and knocking doors. It's kind of all the simple things that you can do for basically no money.
Yeah. Are you finding yourself grinding? I mean, do you think when you're laying in bed or in front of the TV or whatever you do on your off time, do you find yourself thinking about, okay, how can I get another account, some ideas, what goes through your head with trying to grow your service route?
Absolutely. I feel like I go through waves. So last year when I was trying to grow, everybody has their sweet spot, I think, of when you start making the money you personally need to make. And I wasn't there for a while. And so I came from the motocross industry, so I was building motors and stuff in the garage at night, and then I also had this little janitor job at night, and that was all just to keep the bills paid while I was getting one pool at a time, and just trying to think of ways to expedite that. And I feel like you do what you have to do. So if you have to get 10 pools, you're going to figure out how to get 10 pools. And the real struggle comes when you're kind of comfortable and it's easy to just sit back and just live on what you got. And growth at that point is like a different kind of challenge.
Do you have a point in your head that, okay, once I reach this point, I'll kind of throttle back and just start tightening up things or focus on different avenues in your business? Or do you feel like you're always going to be wanting to grow?
It's hard to say. I mean, we talked last time about everybody wants to grow, but there's all these different problems that come when you have 300 pools or so. My sweet spot right now is I'd like to just have one guy that's full-time, kind of flexible full-time, somewhere between 60 and 90 pools, depending on what he can handle, and me just doing repairs and tile cleans. And kind of like we were saying about the waves, like I want to grow to that point and then throttle back and just, okay, let's take some time, 6 months or a year, and let's just tighten up the screws on what we have here, and then we'll grow again or whatever. Maybe that's the sweet spot for me forever. I have no idea,
Sure, yeah. Would you say that you're pretty aggressive in wanting to grow, or are you just taking it as it comes and focusing on the finer points in your business and stuff like that?
Maybe somewhere in the middle. Everyone would like to think they're aggressive, but I mean, in all reality, like you said, I mean, it's like 3:00 right now on Tuesday and I'm here. Yeah. So I'm not that aggressive.
Sure.
Otherwise I probably would have blown you off, but finding that balance of like enjoying my life, but trying to grow, because everyone's got their dreams and whatnot, and everyone wants to be a millionaire or whatever it is, but,
because you experienced quick growth at the first time, your first time servicing pools with that property management company who came in and just dropped a lot of pools on you. Do you find that was a little bit more stressful than the way you're doing it right now?
Oh, absolutely. They gave us like around 200 pools overnight, and they were all terrible. And at the time, I was 23, and my partner, who is kind of like the money behind it all, was 29, I think, which is how old I am now. So neither one of us had a clue what we were doing, and I think I slept like 2 or 3 hours a night, with everything we had to do, and that was terrible. And I feel like we were running as fast as we could, and money was just falling out of our pockets, So it's definitely nicer, I think, for me to grow slow.
If you were in that same position right now, you get a phone call and a property management company calls you up and says, we got 200 pools, you were referred to us, we want you to take those on. What would you do differently today? Or how would you handle that? Or would you turn that stuff down?
I'd have to at least go have a meeting with them. It's just,
sure. Excuse me.
No worries.
So would you take that on?
Possibly. It depends on if the dollars were right. The first time the dollars were really low, like crazy. So we basically didn't make any money on service. We got enough to pay our guys and cover our costs, and then we made money on repairs. I wouldn't do that again. And the other thing I would do is I'd make sure to get an actual contract. We just kind of had a handshake, and so the deal went south with that company. And so there's some things I'd do different, but I'd be very hesitant to take on that many pools from a property management company, because you're going to invest in trucks and equipment and guys that are now relying on this business to feed their families or whatever, and they could just go overnight.
You lost those pools in no fault to your own, correct? It was their problem. It was their situation that they sold the houses, or it wasn't necessarily that you and your partner were doing a bad job on the pools. It was the property management company failed, right?
It was a little bit of both, I think.
Okay.
There was a couple situations I'll show a little bit of my cards from our history here. I believe there was like 1 or 2 addresses that they had given us that slipped through the cracks that we were billing for, and this house didn't even have a pool. Like, we weren't even going there. You know what I mean? Because it kind of goes to what you said before. We just didn't have enough experience handling that volume of pools, and so our books and everything was not tidy. And so there was a little bit of that going on. We had a middleman between us and the property management company. So I don't know, when we sent him, hey, the bill for the month is $35,000. I don't know if he was tacking on $5,000 on top of that or not. I have no idea. And so we didn't really have a whole lot of control. We just talked to our middleman. The middleman talked to the actual company. Okay. And then the company had done this to 2 or 3 other pool companies before us. Just, nope, we're going with somebody else. And they're not, that company, property management company doesn't even exist anymore, you know. So there's blame to spread all around, I'd say.
Yeah, that's very difficult when your information isn't getting straight to the person who makes the decision. You got that middleman in there. Do you shy away from property management at this time in your career, or do you welcome them on? Or is that something that you focus on, or are you just trying to get the one pool single customer at a time?
Right now, I'm just single customer at a time. I have a few pools that I deal with a property manager, but it's not like he gave me 10 pools. It's 1 or maybe 2. And I even shy away from that because some of them that I have are a pain.
Getting a bunch of pools overnight can be a good thing. It can grow your business quite quickly. Did you see any benefits from it? I mean, there was no lack of work, right? There was constant workflow coming in.
Oh yeah, I know I talk a lot of negative about it, but that's how we started the business. Like we had talked before, my father had a pool business growing up, and I just got burned out on it. And this guy, Jason, was my partner. Jason got a call from somebody, and he got the in on the possibility to do this, and he called me. Jason didn't know anything about pools. He's just kind of an entrepreneur. He said, "Hey, you want to do pools again?" And I was like, "No, not really." And he said, "Well, somebody's got 200 pools they want to give us." And I said, "Nobody gives away 200 pools. What do you mean?" And at the time, I didn't even really understand what property management was. So yeah, it was great in that aspect. We went from not having a business to having a business, and I was making pretty okay money for a young kid, just working hard. So I think there's a bunch of ways to skin a cat, something that works for me might not work for another business, and vice versa.
So you started the business essentially overnight. Hey, we got 200 accounts. We need to get to work. Business ended up failing. Second time around, you're starting off a little bit slower. What's some of the advice you have for other guys that want to come out and start servicing their own pools, and they want to do it organically like you're doing now? What are some of the lessons you've learned?
Some of the things I've learned is just I've dabbled with this and that, like what works for, if you're starting out small and you don't have the money to go buy a route or have money for operating expenses and stuff. You're just doing it out of the cash you have in your pocket, like some guys do. I found like things like going door to door, and I put yard signs on street corners and stuff like that, and they're all cheap ways, but they work. They work if you do it right. And there's if you could buy a route, that'd be awesome, but not everybody has the money to make that happen. But I think you just have to work hard. And if you're wanting to start a business, I've gotten to the point where I can be a little bit lazy, and I have been, especially this last winter. Everyone kind of takes a break in the winter, I think. But in the beginning, I mean, you work 24/7. You work Saturdays. If that's you got to do what you got to do to get it off the ground. And if you're just barely getting in, you can't just kind of dibble dabble, I think, because you'll just have 10 pools for like 2 years. It'll never grow.
How about as far as communication with your customers, billing, receiving, just the fundamentals of running a pool business, making sure that the invoices go out on the same time, every month for the reoccurring service, getting that credit card on file. I mean, what are some of the fundamentals that you make sure that you do all the time, or is everything just kind of when you get around to it?
I've done both, right? And it's everything I learned the hard way, I feel like. I found investing in your equipment, your software programs, whatever, is worth it. I tried Square, I tried QuickBooks, I've tried a bunch of different options. And yeah, communication with the customer is huge, and I see that all the time, because as a service guy, it's pretty easy to get moving pretty fast, and you don't want to talk to a customer. You just want to do your 15, 20 pools for the day and get out. And you don't want to make any calls when you get home, but you're asking, about my tile cleans or whatever other repair work I do. If you don't tell the customer they need to clean their filter, they're not going to clean their filter, and you're missing out on $100 plus the pool's going to stop operating as well, and it's going to take you longer. And the pool, if you don't just talk to your customers, you're going to cause a lot of problems.
Do you have anything in place currently that you talk to the customers or send an email out or send something out, or is the only time they're hearing from you is when you're billing out if there's an issue, and then when you service the pool? I don't know, you said Brain, or what was it, Pool Brain?
Pool Brain.
Do they send out an email notification of some sort when you service their pool?
Yeah, so before Pool Brain, we were just leaving tickets when we were there to show that we came, and it had very basic info on it. And that was our only real communication with the customer besides when we sent out their invoice or if there's an issue. And I have such a small amount of pools, 50 pools. It's pretty easy. They all know me, and it's pretty easy to call them and say, hey, Steve, this is what's going on. As you grow, obviously, it's harder to be that way. You might not even know who some of your customers are. But Pool Brain sends an email. You put on your pictures and all of your chemical readouts and everything, and it emails them every day. But I don't have like a weekly or monthly,
like a newsletter or nothing. Have you ever thought about doing anything like that?
I've thought about a lot of that stuff, and again, it kind of comes back to maybe my laziness, getting home and wanting to goof off instead of work on some of these things. So that's kind of why we were talking. I want to grow just a little bit more because that's where my personal numbers are coming out, saying I need to do these things. But then from there, just kind of hang out and really get out the rest of that stuff dialed.
Perfect.
Before I have 200 pools or whatever it is.
Yeah. You stop, or you're getting your service route taken care of, and tell me the story about when you decided that going tile cleaning was the route for you. How you figured out or realized that tile cleaning was a business, how you got started, and what you're doing now.
So at the time, I think I had maybe 20 pools or so, and it wasn't enough. I was doing all these extra jobs and stuff to make ends meet, and I just always knew about tile cleaning. Like I said, I grew up in the industry, but I had never done it. My dad did it when I was a little kid. He had like a really cheap rig that he used for a little bit, and then I don't even know what happened to it. It's just gone somewhere. And so I just always knew there's pretty decent money in that. It's comparable to like doing an acid wash, and about how much time it takes, all that kind of stuff, and you can make pretty good money. So that's what I was thinking at the time, is I was doing everything I could just to keep the bills paid, and there wasn't any money left every month to really try to grow, And so that's what I was thinking, like I could do tile cleans. It's cool. I mean, I like bead blasting anyways. It's kind of fun and a good way to generate some revenue. And I was correct in like what the potential of the business is great, but it did not pan out the way I wanted to at first. I was thinking once I got the rig, I'd just be printing my money, and it was a lot more difficult than that just to get jobs and everything.
So the struggle was just getting the job, getting the experience, getting that customer that wants the tile cleaning?
I mean, that's part of it. The other part is I couldn't find any information on it. In fact, I chose the blasting pot that I bought based off some guy I saw on Instagram in Australia was using this blasting pot to clean tile. And that was like all the information I could find at the time. And so I bought that one, and then come to find out as I really start to get into it and you start to rub shoulders with guys that are doing it, there's much better options for not much more money than what I spent. And so I had to design my rig a couple times and just learn a lot about different medias and stuff. And just like anything, there's a good learning curve.
Where were you learning this stuff on? Your clients' pools, or were you just shooting anything that you could find calcium on just to understand that, hey, this pot isn't the pot that I want? How did you get all your...
Both. So luckily I have a pool, And at the time, it had a lot of calcium buildup on it. So I shot my pool first. And to show you how little I knew at the get-go, my dad had always told me, like, soda blasting was, like, the cool thing, and because you wouldn't even have to drain the pool and this and that. And that's kind of the way I was going. And I was shooting my pool with soda. I'm like, man, this stuff is not coming off. Like, this stuff sucks. And ended up reaching out to the company that I bought the pot from. And they'd said, oh, yeah, a lot of pool guys use Max Strip. So I started using that. And I was like, this stuff's great. But they told me about the problems when it sits in water, and I actually saw that happen. And so I shot my pool, and I shot a bunch of friends' pools and learned pretty quick. Like I said, I have a bit of a kind of a hands-on technical background. So I picked a lot of stuff up quick. But you just learn along the way. And then, you end up learning stuff mostly just about efficiency on customer pools. I was able to figure out, I shoot mostly Max Strip because that's kind of what I learned with, and that's what I'm really comfortable with. But there's definitely applications where Max Strip isn't the best media to use.
So break it down to me as far as the rig's concerned. You're talking about media and your pot, so kind of run through some of the checks that somebody would want to do if they were producing their own rig.
In my opinion, there's a handful of pots. You have a different pot than I do, and they're all kind of at different price points. That's what everything depends on, I think, is how much money do you want to invest. For me, I feel a little foolish because I spent around 10 grand with like a trailer and everything. I want to do it all right, I thought, and I could have spent just a hair more money and got a Clemco pot instead of, I have an Ace 2PS is what it's called, and it's really a soda blasting pot for the automotive industry that's been kind of reworked to work for pools, and I put a lot of work into it. The Clemco, if it's a little more expensive, but if you got the money, I think that's the way to go.
So let's start with the compressor because that's the main heart of it, right? What is somebody going to want to look at when it comes to compressors? Understanding that you could get the Harbor Freight, $1,200 one all the way up to the $3,500 and beyond. So what is your knowledge in these compressors, and what are your suggestions when somebody's going to go out and buy them?
My opinion, I don't have all the numbers memorized quite as well as some of these other guys do as far as the CFM and everything, but it's matching the compressor to your blasting pot and also the size of hose and everything you're going to use. What do you plan on doing? Because I see some of these guys out there with like a nail gun compressor, and they're running a Harbor Freight blasting pot, and they've figured it out, and it works great for them. I mean, that's kind of how the industry was in the 80s, and it's not like calcium itself has changed, Yeah. So there's different methods, but you could still use a Harbor Freight setup and a cheap compressor, and some of those guys do everything out of the back of a pickup truck, and some of those guys might be making 3 times the amount of money I'm making off of it, It's just, what do you want to invest? I think long-term for me, I thought the enclosed trailer, I have a 30-gallon Ingersoll Rand compressor. It's the 14-horse. I think it's 26 or 28 CFM. I think it's 26. 28 would be better, but that's what I have. And, Ingersoll Rand is a pretty well-known company. It's a little higher quality.
Are you ever waiting on the compressor to like
Never.
charge or whatnot?
Never. I just hold it down and blast. I can hear it cycling up and down, but I just go.
Is that the difference? Is that what CFM is rating? So if I have a smaller CFM compressor, it's going to need to like recharge more than a higher CFM compressor?
Exactly. It's cubic feet per minute, is what CFM is. And so that's the volume of air that compressor can produce. And so, if you're blasting a ton of air, and you can change a lot of this with different size tips and stuff. Bigger tips need more air. Some guys use gnarly air compressors that produce tons of CFM, and they use bigger tips, and they stand further back, and they can do a pool faster. And if that's your business model and you want to set up to do 3 or even 4 pools a day and just quick, that's what you got to do.
Are those the compressors that they're towing behind the vehicle?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't even know a lot about them. Those are kind of like over my pay grade.
Yeah.
But they're the expensive ones. Yeah, they're probably $7-8 grand, I think.
how much did you focus on horsepower? You said that there's not a lot of information out there, and I agree with you. There's not. So as far as horsepower, how are you just talking to the people who are selling these compressors and trying to pick their brain as much as possible?
So like I said, coming from the motocross, like automotive industry, I knew a little bit about compressors. We use compressed air a lot for our tools. And so I did take just a little bit of a shot in the dark. I saw when you buy a blasting pot, typically they'll say it requires this window of CFM, right? And so I just got a compressor that could produce that. I didn't really worry too much whether it was a 12 or a 14 horse. Of course, you know, if one's good, two's better, right? So I kind of went with that mindset, but that's just what was available. And there's even better options for that from what I got. It's just how much do you want to spend? You know, my compressor was about $3,000 and some change, and that was about as much as I felt like spending on a compressor. But I love it. I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever.
So we got the hopper. Let's talk about the hopper a little bit. The Klemco. What's the Klemco and why is it so good?
You know, well, it's funny. I like idolize the Klemco, but I've never even shot with one. It's just when I go in PEX Coating Supply in Phoenix is kind of like the place to get your stuff for the most part. They're really knowledgeable and they've got the best stuff in my opinion. And so that's how I even found out about it. That's where I went to buy some media one day, and I just looking at it, I'm like, this thing is just, you can just look at it, and it's just built better than what I have. And, I mean, I don't even know if it's worth getting into all the little nuances. I've taken mine and putting on a different valve and a vibrator and some of these things that just come on the Klemco when you buy it from PEX, because PEX kind of builds the Klemco up as well and kind of tricks it out. But I've put a lot of those parts on my setup to try and make it operate better. But their dead man switch is better than my dead man switch. It just works better. It's built more solid. And I mean, that's why it's a little more expensive. It's just built better all around. It's almost like comparing the Harbor Freight version, except it's not. Mine's not quite that crappy, okay. But, you know, no offense to anyone running Harbor Freight stuff. But
yeah. No sweat. Are you wanting to get to a Klemco, or is your rig dialed in the way that you're good?
If I got to the position where I could have a second rig, I'd buy a Klemco, and I'd probably buy a bigger trailer than what I have now. There's a few things I would change, but yeah. I'm in neck deep with this one, and I've kind of got it set up to where it works for me. And I've also learned, you know, mine will clog up every now and again. That's one of the issues with Max Strip, right? That it clogs more than anything else. And I've been able to figure it out pretty quickly. Once it clogs, I know exactly where the clog's at, and I can fix it within 2 minutes usually. But that's still 2 minutes that you're not blasting, you know. And it's a pain. It's a pain when you're finally in the zone and you got to get out and you have all this, your whole get up with your goggles and everything, and you got to take it all off to fix a clog.
So when you're not blasting pools, you try to rectify the issues that you're having while you're in the pool.
Exactly.
So you're in the garage, you're the mechanic, you're messing with valves and trying to open things and close things and get it to dial in. How long did that take? Or are you still messing with it?
I'd say I'm still messing with it. I mean, I've got it pretty close now, but I'm always trying to refine the setup. And I think it's just like anything. Even, you know, when you first got into service, I'm sure the way you set your truck up and the things you carried changed within a year or two to be more efficient, because you realize what you need, what you don't. You know, you move stuff to the back of the trailer because that's the stuff you grab the most often, not, you know, and you kind of bury some stuff over here, whatever. It's just figuring out your system and what works. So it's all about efficiency. You don't want to be at a pool for 4 hours if you can avoid it, you know.
And the higher CFM, higher compressors, bigger pots, stuff like that will help you get through the pool faster.
Absolutely. You know, some of these guys with these smaller, like nail gun compressors, they work, but they're having to wait on it all the time. And besides just waiting on it and that taking you more time, that compressor's working really hard and it's going to burn up eventually.
Okay. So we talked about the compressor, the hopper, the reels and the hoses, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I know you could get different size hoses and whatnot, but you're not going to put the 1/4-inch hose on one of these larger compressors.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that it's hard for me to say that's common sense, but someone may not know that. You have to get a certain hose for your compressor so it could handle that hose. Because the one in my garage has a small hose, but I can't put that one on our tile cleaning rig.
Exactly. But if you're shooting with like a nail gun compressor, that's probably what you'd want.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, I mean, I think if you never know, everyone comes into things at different knowledge levels of those types of tools, and just ask questions. If you can search around on AZ Pool Techs, there's a lot of stuff you need to wade through to get to good information, but every now and again there's a good little thread on tile cleaning, and there's a lot of really knowledgeable guys that are totally willing to share all their information on what type of nozzles they use and all sorts of stuff. And that's what I would say if you're thinking about getting into cleaning tile. If I could go back to when I started, I definitely would have called some of the people that I now know their numbers to call, and I probably would have had a completely different rig, and it probably would have been a little more profitable from the get-go. But part of that's my own stubbornness.
Do you have buddies in the industry that you guys are shooting pictures back and forth to check this out? I shot this 200 linear foot pool today. Look how gnarly that is. I mean, do you have those conversations with dudes in the industry?
A little bit. To be honest, I'm not I didn't have any friends in the industry until just the last few months because I just didn't know anybody. I was just kind of doing my own thing, and most of my experiences with other pool guys they were pretty slim and they were kind of negative. I just happened to meet some of the not so cool pool guys out there. But now there's a couple guys that we'll kind of joke around with. I don't know Chris Love super well, but we'll kind of go back and forth every now and again.
He's a good dude to anybody, in my opinion. He's a real fun dude. Was that hard for you starting this business? I mean, putting the rig together is one thing. That's, you said, a $10,000 investment. As far as just servicing pools and not having anyone in the industry with you, your dad serviced pools, so you could bounce ideas off of him, or did you just have no communication within the pool industry community?
Really, the second one, no communication. Really, I have one guy. He's an older guy that he just kind of does his service, and that's about it. And we'll just chit chat and hang out, and sometimes Jerry Warford, I don't know if you know him, but he's been in the industry forever. He worked at Cloud. He knew me from when I was a little kid going into Cloud and stuff. So there's a couple guys that I knew, but for the most part, I was just cleaning the pools and doing my thing, and then going and hanging out with the dirt bike buddies, and they don't know anything about pools. They don't care.
Do you want to be more invested in that side of the industry?
I do. I've noticed it. It helps actually because it becomes more a part of your life than just what I do for money over here, but I actually care about whatever, in my private time. It becomes everything. And it's nice when I was younger, like I said, I got into pools. My first pool business was when I was going to school. I was 19 when I had 15 pools, and I didn't know anybody else doing that when they were 19 or 23, 25. Now around, I'm about 30, and there's quite a few guys that are around this age that are doing it. And so it's cool to talk to those guys because they're in the same position where they're learning things, and they'll give you some tricks, or I'll give them some tricks. I found this works or that, and you learn a lot faster instead of you having to experience everything. And usually when you learn from experience, it means you learn from a failure. It's best to avoid those as much as possible.
Sure. You have any big failures that may come to mind?
One of the biggest with tile cleans, luckily it wasn't any damage to the customer's equipment or whatever, their tile, but I did a huge tile clean job. Well, for me it was huge. It was only about 100 linear feet, but they had a water feature that was all stone, and it took a lot more media than I was prepared for. And so I had to, in the middle of the job, go out to Phoenix. They were the only place I knew of that even sold Max Strip. By the time I finished the job, there was a decent amount of Max Strip that had gotten wet and sat and it was a Pebble Tech pool, and I probably blasted for 3 hours or whatever to get everything done, and then I cleaned for about 6 or 7 hours trying with a pressure washer, trying to get this stuff up, and it does come up. So I mean, if you ever do it, don't freak out like it's not the end of the world, but it just takes forever. It's like concrete.
Unreal. What's going through your mind at that point? You're younger or newer into the industry, right?
Yeah.
How many
Sure,
pools have you blasted, would you say, before this situation?
At that one, that was the first like real customer pool I had blasted.
Oh no.
And it was a nice house up in North Mesa with the view over the desert. I mean, $1 million home.
Where did they find your information at?
They were actually one of the pools that I bought from this other guy. And so
you announced to your customers that you now have a tile clean, and did you do an email blast to all your customers?
I just talked to them.
Okay.
Just, I saw they needed tile clean and
have you ever done an email blast to all your customers? Hey, I clean tile.
No, I never
check out
do
these
that.
sweet pictures and how good I am at this. Why wouldn't you do that?
I don't know. I just never done it.
You got to put them all on a blind copy email, put some sweet pictures that you've done before and after, and tell them, I'm cleaning tile. Let me know who won.
There you go. You're getting into like the core of my problems here is at the root of it all, I'm kind of an employee for like my own business, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so I'm not much of a businessman. I'm just good at cleaning pools and pretty decent at shooting tile, but the business end of it lacks.
That's actually a good thing, and I hope that I could remember to go into that conversation here in a little bit. But back up into your issue, your first pool, concrete laying at the bottom of this pool. What's going through your mind? I mean, anxious? Are you worried? Are you freaking out? Are you chill because you know you're going to rectify the situation? What's
a little bit of both. I mean, I'm a pretty calm guy, anyways. Like I always think, like we'll figure this out. But I was sweating bullets, and it was just one of those times too. Like the sun's starting to go down, and I knew I'd figure it out, but I don't want to come back the next day. And then it's kind of embarrassing. Customers can kind of tell when you're having an issue. It's just like, oh my gosh, you look like an idiot in front of the customer. And he was a cool guy. He actually came out. I was doing an acid wash all at the same time too and stuff. So he came out and talked to me for a while about politics and stuff. And it was all cool for a while, but they like to come out and check on things. And so when you're having an issue, I was just like, crap, dude. And I even knew, because I knew about the whole hardening issue, like do not let that happen. But this is the first time I'd experienced it. And I was even thinking, if I filled the pool up and there's water sitting on it and you brush it it might take a couple weeks, but like it'll come out.
Break out.
Yeah. I know it'll be fine in the end, but I don't want to leave this chunk of max strip at the bottom of this customer's pool. So I just use a electric pressure washer. I use it for my dirt bikes too because they're not very powerful. So you never have to worry about tearing something up. Some of these gas-powered pressure washers, you got to be careful, especially if you're on a plaster pool, an older plaster pool, you'll rip it apart.
Did you get paid on that job?
So, I didn't make any money at the end of the day, I don't think.
Due to the fact that it was the sweat or the amount of...
And I underestimated the amount of media that I was going to shoot, and I was giving them a really good deal anyways, just because I wanted to seal that first deal.
Yeah.
And so I might have made $100 off of like 12 or 14 hours of work. Oh. So
that's the difference, though, between business owners and just doing a job. You literally, it's your name at stake. You have to correct this issue. You have to get this done. And there's something inside of you. It's fearful, but you also have you have to learn how to balance that when you run your own business, even if it is just our pool service business, because I know that feeling that you've had inside. And honestly, I am more of a hyperactive individual and I freak out over anything. So, I mean, that would have put me through the roof. I would have came home and had to pass out because I would have been so anxious, and I know what you went through on that.
It's scary, and it could be a little scary if you're first getting into tile. I mean, I would suggest talking to people about what kind of rig you want to set up, and then talking to them about different types of tile and stuff. Again, I learned about glass tile kind of later on, and luckily Max Strip is the stuff to use for glass tile, and that's all I was shooting anyways. I mean, sometimes it stresses me out looking back, like, man, what if I would have just been a glass bead guy and I just whoop right on somebody's glass tile? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. How do you learn that stuff? Because there are guys out there that are doing this, tile cleaning for a living, and that's all they do. And they go behind people that burn through tiles. I am responsible for burning tile. I have burned tile out there. How do you avoid that? Just continue to talk. I mean, at some point you have to launch and do it. And you can't know everything about it until you get into that industry, or, you actually get involved and do it. So how do you avoid a mistake that you don't know is going to come up when you're new into this? I mean, you almost have to just jump in and get started.
I think so too. I mean, you get as much advice as possible before you go drop 10 grand, right? And you weigh your options, because there's different types of rigs you can set up at different price points. And then from there, I totally agree. I'm a shoot first, ask questions later kind of guy, which is it's not always the best, but that's just how I am. And so that's what I did. I just jumped in. I'm like, I'll just figure this out. And I think a lot of it is common sense. You look at glass tile, like, ooh, can I shoot this? This looks like it's glass. I don't know. You call somebody and ask them, or you pick a spot in the pool that nobody's really going to see that piece of tile, and you shoot it from kind of far back, and you get up closer, and then you stop and you see what it looks like. I mean, I don't know if that's what everybody else does, but I do that on every job. Yeah. Every job I kind of try to, unless it's a tile that you're really experienced with, but for the most part, I try to pick a spot that's not so right in the customer's face. And I'll just start with 1 or 2 tiles, and we'll stop and we'll see what's going on there. I always try and double check my pressure and everything, because it's a big deal if you ruin somebody's tile. I don't even know what you do to correct that issue, to be honest.
Does the customer know, hey, you burned through my tile? Or they just see calcium line and now there's no calcium line, so they have no idea if their tile was burned through?
Well, that just comes into question of your honesty, right? The customer might not ever notice. Personally, I would tell a customer,
I burned your tile.
Yeah, there was one pool I did where I scared myself at first, because I did the first couple tiles and it had been burned before, but at first I thought I did it. I was like, oh no. And then it kind of dawned on me, like, no, and you could kind of tell, like, no, it was like this. Somebody used glass bead at too high of a pressure, and I don't know what the situation was for that to happen. I mean, sometimes, like you said, some customers just don't care if we're coming back to that conversation or communication conversation, right? Like, if you just let the customer know your tile is terrible, it's your call. Maybe they need new tile. I mean, I just shot some tile in Tempe, and it was for a friend, so it was kind of a different deal. But I told her, I'm like, your tile sucks. Like it needs to be replaced. We can do this. And I gave her a killer deal because she was a friend of mine. But, like, we can do this if you'd like. And there's a possibility stuff's going to get ripped apart because your tile is just old and falling apart. And they didn't care, because at the end of the day, it looks better than it did before. So every situation's different.
A little different. We kind of we were going through the list of things, the compressor, the hopper, we didn't talk about the dryer, but you need a dryer to dry the air that's being compressed because it condensates, right?
Absolutely. And so I have a small dryer that's on my actual blasting pot or hopper. At PEX they have a big one. I'm not sure the model name or anything, but it's much better. And it's this whole separate unit that you plug in, and the drier you can keep the air, the better. And I've gotten to the point where I can even notice, like in my hose, like my water separator is full. Yeah. And it'll fill up.
That's awesome.
Pretty quick. And it's awesome that you can see that, but it's not awesome because once you see it, it's like it's in the media.
Correct, but
it's already there.
Yeah, but you're understanding what's going on, and in future jobs, you know how to prevent it or eliminate it. So that's pretty neat that you're learning that. Finally, the trailer, I guess we would say the trailer would be the final thing, and or in the back of the truck, enclosed or flatbed. You running enclosed?
I like the enclosed just because it's all in there. I don't have to worry about unloading anything. Yeah, it's easy. But it gets a little hotter in there. You want to try and set your compressor up in a way that it doesn't get too hot and cook itself. But, I mean, there's pros and cons to everything. Everything is at a different price point. It's also not a bad idea to start out with a cheap rig that's going to cost you, $1,500 total to set up, and do that for a year or two. and now you've got money to go buy a nice rig.
Okay.
I probably should have done that looking back, but
You dropped a lot of money into getting this rig going. What would you say to somebody that doesn't have a lot of money, that wants to get into this industry, that's willing to put 6 hours into a 4-hour job or 4 hours into a 2-hour job just to start, getting that income coming in? How have you ever priced out cheap options? I mean, could you get away with $4,000 putting a rig together?
oh yeah, and there's all sorts of stuff. Like, I bought a brand new trailer, everything brand new. You can buy whole rigs sometimes from people. They're hard to find, but they're out there. If you can get a hold of the information, you can buy a whole rig for way under price. You know what I mean? Or you could just get a Harbor Freight blasting pot. I mean, one of my friends was doing pest control, and somebody gave him a Harbor Freight blasting pot because he just thought it was garbage. And my friend knew I'd clean tile, so he's like, I just brought it home for you. Yeah. You can have it. I've never used it, but it's there. And you can figure out all sorts of ways and systems. If I could go back, I probably would have just got a Harbor Freight blast pot and a decent compressor and figured it out from there. Because I didn't have a lot of money. I had to borrow money from a friend to get started. Okay. So that's another thing. Whenever you borrow money or you get a loan, it's a lot easier to spend that money. When it's your own hard-earned money, you end up going the cheap route usually.
But now I mean, building a second rig and all that stuff, now you're, and or if somebody asks you for advice, you're knowledgeable in this field now. So that's awesome, growing pains and whatnot. So we talked about how to put a rig together and some of the stuff on the rig. You started getting into the process of selling the tile cleaning. Whether somebody calls you on the phone or it's one of your customers, let's do the cold call, they called you. What's your process of selling tile cleaning?
So I'll give them a ballpark price over the phone if they're really curious about the price. Most people, I just say, yeah, I'll come out and quote you, and they're fine with that. And I'll just tell them it's anywhere from $4 on up a foot.
Do they know the linear feet on their pool?
They usually don't. Sometimes people will say it's just, when you do service, some people are really specific and anal, some people aren't. But I just tell them it doesn't matter because I need to come out and quote it, because sometimes someone might have a 120-foot pool and there's just like barely any calcium on it. So that job's probably going to be cheaper. Maybe they say, oh, yeah, it was just cleaned a year ago. So, it's just going to dust right off. And like, I'm going to take care of that person. I'm not going to just take that one to the bank and still charge them the same. And then also there's a pool where you can tell this tile's never been cleaned. The pool's 15 years old. Like that's $5 a foot, plus it's got a rock or something, and stone takes longer to clean up. And so all that, I go out and I quote them. And you're talking about picking up pools. I probably picked up maybe between 5 and 10 pools from Tile Cleans. And I'll basically give them a month of free service. I'll knock $100 off their tile clean if they sign up for service.
That is a good way to grow your route, is adding the service. I hear a bunch of guys, the pool is green, acid washed, converted that client to a weekly service. So they do work hand in hand. You can build the one business and vice versa. You could build the other business by, kind of piggybacking off the two. So when you say an average of $4 a foot, a linear foot, you may bring it down if the calcium line is not as aggressive than if it was very aggressive. You're going to go up a linear foot.
Yeah, exactly. I typically shoot at $450 a foot, and I include everything. I'm not sure how a lot of guys do it. I think a lot of guys charge separately for drain and startup chemicals. I usually include it all.
One price,
and that's just because personally, I want to see one price when I'm buying something. I hate, but then there's this fee, and like, okay, well, you kind of already got me tied in, and you tack on another $150. I hate that. So I don't know. I could possibly be leaving money on the table. I'd be curious to know how a lot of other guys do it, but
$450 is respectable.
I think it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy at that. I mean, we were talking last time. I think it deserves more than that. If you compare, people are getting $500 for an acid wash, and an acid wash is probably one of the easiest things you could do on a pool.
Yeah.
And so
no equipment, very little product.
I mean, just throwing something out there, a tile clean should be double that, you
Yeah.
know, and it's just not. That's just not what is happening. Some guys are probably getting closer to that, you know, $800 or whatever. I don't know, but that's what I do. And I also believe in, you know, I try and shoot for the long term, and I'd rather leave a little bit of money on the table and have a customer in the future, or like we said, a customer right now. I mean, I've done jobs at my cost to get them to sign up for service, because the way I see it, I look at that as like $1,200 or so for the year versus I'll make $300 right now.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Yeah.
They're not my customer anymore. Like, forget that. And it's a tile clean 2 years from now.
So you're bundling things, essentially.
I bundle all the time. I'll bundle a filter clean. I'll bundle whatever I can to try and say, I'm going to get typically it's between $450 to $800 is where most of my tile cleans fall in. And I'll usually throw some stuff in there. So it's like you're not going to find a better deal.
Yeah.
Basically. Or if you are, you're going to have to work really hard to find the other guy who's going to give you this deal. So you're just going to go with me.
I like it. Are there any things that you are absolutely checking before you shoot the tile to try to make sure that, is this tile already burned? I need to notify the customer. Are there some things that, you know, you're making sure that you clear with the customer so they don't come out and say, hey, what about this?
So some of the things I've learned along the way, personally, I don't know how to tell if tile is burned while there's calcium on it. I'm not sure if you can. If you can, I've not been shown that because it's covered in calcium.
Sure.
Can't see anything. A lot of times it'll even get you, it doesn't look so bad while there's water in the pool, and you come back after it's drained and it seems like the calcium
Where'd that
doubled.
come from? Yeah.
And I've done that too, and I don't go back on quotes. And I think it would be fair to say, hey, you know, this is a little worse than we thought. And I think most customers would be okay with that, but I don't ever do that. So one of the biggest things I've learned to look for is like clean outs. When I'm there doing a quote, find the clean out, because I've done one or two where we couldn't find the clean out when I'm there to drop the pump, you know, that day. And so then you end up pumping that media into the street, and it makes a huge mess. Max Strip's the messiest stuff in the world.
As far as the quote, you mentioned quote and that you go quote these pools. Are you doing that for free?
I do that for free, and a lot of guys are charging, you know, $100 or $50
just to go look at it.
To go look at it, and it goes towards, you know.
I see.
Price.
So they're trying to weed out the looky-loos, and I'm not quite ready to do that, but I'm getting there, because there's definitely tire kickers. You know? It takes a decent amount of time to show up to somebody's house and go through all this stuff, and I've got a fairly decent amount of people that haven't gone with me for whatever reason. But you're still building right now. You're hungry. You're willing to take that risk to go meet with the customer to try to get that job, rather than just say, hey, it's $100 and it'll go towards it, or sorry, I'm not your guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you feel like you're ever going to get to that point?
I would like to. So it's interesting having the two businesses. On the pro side of it, you know, the service can kind of help pay for some of the equipment and whatnot and growth of the tile clean. But on the con side of it, I have a service business that does pretty decent. So I'm a little comfortable. You know, I'm not, if all I did was tile cleans, I'd probably be doing a lot more tile cleans, you know?
Sure.
I'd be hungry. I kind of treat this as my extra money, which is not the best way to look at it, but that's kind of the reality. And so, yeah, I'm willing to go out and, you know, eat a little bit of dirt, I guess you could say.
So that is a good conversation to have too, because you're essentially running two different businesses. You could break them down as two different businesses. Where do you find yourself spending the most amount of your efforts and time building which one?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. I run them as one business, but someday if they were both sizable, I'd probably separate them, you know, to make things easier. But I find I end up focusing on service more, because service is just bigger and it's actually making me more money right now. And it's easier because you get a service client and they're your customer, and you just kind of keep them happy. and that's pretty easy. Whereas tile clean, it's one and done for a couple years. Hopefully they call you back and not somebody else, but you're not going to see that person for a few years. And so there's so much more effort to get a tile clean. And so that's where I find I have to put more effort if I want tile cleans, and then I end up putting a little more effort into service because it's nice to know you're going to get approximately this amount of money every month from your service.
With selling you mentioned hoping that they call you back in a few years. You get their name, you get their phone number, you get their address, you probably get their email. Are you doing anything with any of that information as far as a business owner is concerned?
Yeah, I keep it all. I add them as a customer in my QuickBooks and stuff like that. I should probably organize that information more, have a file somewhere that's like, and I keep I just run like carbon copy quote forms, and I save all of them, So that's probably not the most efficient way because it's old school and it's paper and whatnot, and you got to thumb through it all to find stuff. But
you still have it.
I have it.
Yeah.
And I'm a little old school in my mind anyways.
An old soul.
An old soul. Yeah, that's what we'll call it. But I haven't been cleaning tile long enough to really hit somebody up another time. All their tile is still clean from when I started.
Okay.
It takes a few years, especially if a lot of them are my customers. So their tile better be clean. Otherwise, I'm not keeping the chemicals right if their tile's bad in a year again,
Yeah, I'm interested to see. Yeah. And sometimes you can't prevent that.
I've started to notice, I've learned a lot about water companies in this because you see that in service, but the reality of service is you don't always balance the chemicals perfect. You kind of focus on the main factors and, maybe the pool needs to be drained, but the customer doesn't want to do it. And so the TDS or whatever levels you want to go are just off the charts high, and it's putting calcium on the tile now and stuff like that. And you just do what you do to keep it clean, depending on how much the customer wants to spend. But with tile, I've noticed out like Santan Valley's water is terrible, and tile lines come back like that, And I tell people that when I blast out there, I tell them I'll quote you, and I would love to take over your service to try and prolong the life of your tile as far as like not having calcium lines. But this is what happens out here.
Oh, trying to pull those accounts away, huh? You don't only in Santan Valley, or do you talk to the people everywhere and say, "Hey, look, we're going to clean your tile, but this will happen again," because eventually it will happen again, right? Even if you do have perfect water.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Nobody's taking care of their water so well that the calcium line isn't going to return.
Absolutely, yeah. Sorry if that was like confusing. What I mean, yeah, you're going to get it in 2-3 years, pretty much no matter what. It's going to start coming back, especially it starts to build right on the edge of the grout line, and it starts to like work its way across the tile. That happens no matter what. But in Santan Valley, it just seems to happen a lot faster. And so people are usually okay spending approximately $500-$600 on that every 3 years. That's just the cost of owning a pool and keeping it pretty. But when it's every year, in Santan Valley, not all neighborhoods, but a lot of the neighborhoods out there are a little lower income, and so they're not wanting to spend $500 a year on top of the $200 for 2 filter cleans on top of service and everything.
It's just not there.
Let the tile build calcium on it.
Do they need tile cleaning?
No, it's not necessary.
So it's more of a cosmetic?
Absolutely, and I tell all my customers that too. I try to be no pressure, and I feel like I can do that because I have service. And so I would rather you feel like I'm an honest guy, and maybe you'll call me when you're ready. Maybe you get your tax return or whatever. I don't know. But I don't try to push people, and I say, here's my numbers. This is what it's going to cost to do it, and this is to make it pretty. But it's not going to hurt anything to have ugly calcium-coated tile. That's fine.
Awesome. Just sitting here thinking about it, because we have done the tile in-house before, but I haven't showed a lot of attention to it, and we kind of came away from it. But I'm sitting here thinking about these one-and-dones that you're doing for these clients. You're cleaning the tile, and then you don't hear from them again, but you're also not contacting them again either. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Like I said, that at the end of July, it will be 2 years since I did my first tile clean, and I clean that pool. So I'm there every week, right,
Okay.
on that specific pool.
But I'm almost thinking, would you say more of your tile cleanings come from your service or non-service clients?
Probably about 50-50.
No kidding.
Right now.
Good.
Yeah, but with your service, it just depends. Like, I only have 50 pools, so eventually you're going to run out of tile to clean, and not everybody wants to pay for that either.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking with this email, why wouldn't you just store that information and send out at least a 1-year newsletter to all those people? Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, it makes
Like
total sense.
sweet video of you tile cleaning, some before after pictures. Don't forget about your tile cleaning. And then after a few years of that just repetitively happening over and over and over again, you're kind of closing the ability or the chance that they won't call you back because you're constantly in their face with that tile cleaning.
Right.
And if you make a sweet video and they're sitting there watching the video, that was pretty cool. Can't wait till next year, or next year comes around quick because they don't think about their pools the way we do. We're always thinking about their pools. And then the next year, boom, you get another sweet video and they remember the last video or email or whatever. And now they're calling you again. So you start, after a few years, start having all this repeat business, and you're not allowing them to go search for another pool guy. Hey, hon, do you remember who that pool guy dude was?
Exactly.
His name was like Tage or something. Yeah, all right.
Seth.
Seth.
All the time.
Yeah. Just Google it, hon. I don't know the kid's name. I hope he's doing well.
And then
but
they call Chris.
yeah, and then exactly. And then Chris's names pop up.
Yeah.
I think you should start doing something like that. Which leads me to my next point. I'm starting to realize that there's essentially two sides of the pool business industry. There's the guy that focuses on his work, dials in his equipment, has the truck perfect, constantly learns about the equipment, constantly learns about how to better serve their customers and how to better service the pools and dial in that water. And then you get the guy that's constantly focusing on the business aspect of things. Am I making my profits? Are we growing? Did we do 25% more than we did last year and whatnot? And I'm sure you can mesh those in together and, they kind of integrate. Where would you say that you're at?
Oh, I'm the work guy for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's like, we can get in a little bit to personalities because I think that's a huge part of business that doesn't get talked about, because we talk about business like it's this textbook of like, this is how you do it, and we're all robots. And it's like, well, you have to deal with how your brain operates and your good and bad habits as well. And I've always been kind of an entrepreneur ever since I was a little kid, but also been hands-on with, motorcycles, engines. I like to work. I enjoy working. I'm a terrible businessman, to be honest. You know what I mean?
It's fun.
So it's funny. I tell people that all the time. I jokingly tell people, like, I don't even own a business. I just do things for money. And that's, you're saying all these ideas that they're great, but they're not necessarily groundbreaking. It's like, well, yeah.
It's not like I invented an email blast.
Yeah, like, no duh, I should be doing that. Like, of course, the answer is yes. Anything you're about to say, the answer is yes. I should be doing that. But it's my laziness and whatnot. And then when you're out working all the time too, you're just tired when you get home. Yeah. And that's very real. And so there's also, we talked about differences between you and I. You're just a few years older than I, but you have a family. I'm a single guy, and a little bit about my personality. Obviously, I've mentioned dirt bikes like 20 times already.
No problem.
So it's a big part of my life, and I love adventure. I go ride out in Baja a lot. So that takes a lot of my time and a lot of my brain power. I'm like planning trips in Mexico instead of sending out emails to people. And so, like I said earlier, you do what you have to. I don't have a mouth to feed besides my own. So I'm talking to all sorts of guys that are 10 years older than me and have had businesses for longer than I have, that they say that, like, you step it up when you have a family because now you have to. And not that you have to do that, but you have to change your mindset. And you can obviously see where mine is, where it's like, I want to make sure I'm having a good time. And so when I start shooting tile and it's not fun for me anymore, it's pretty easy to just not really try to go get tile jobs, and I'll just stick with service. You got to show up to clean the pools. You don't have a choice there, but.
Well, I definitely encourage you to enjoy where you're at right now, because looking back, I should have enjoyed that time a little bit more. I was too focused in growing as quick as I wanted to. I was too focused on, doing things right. I can't even do it unless I'm going to do it right. I was just focused on, it got me to where I wanted to be. But looking back, I feel like there was a lot of times I didn't just step back and enjoy what I was doing, enjoy where I was at, and not worry about so much in the future. And so I encourage you to do that. We talked a little bit last time about, you wake up in the morning, you get in your truck, you're rolling the window down, you're driving to the first pool, the sun's coming up, you hit your first pool, you're like, this is pretty sweet. I enjoy this. Nobody's telling me what to do. This is my responsibility. And so I encourage you to live in that for as long, not as long as you can. Eventually you're going to have to move on. We've also talked about retirement, setting yourself up for in the future, but enjoy where you're at right now, because it's a fun time. I would go back to that point.
Absolutely. It's kind of cool that we're doing a second one. Like, what's it been, a month?
Yeah.
So
Has it been?
Probably not even. I don't know.
Yeah, no way. No way.
I don't even know what it's been, but time goes by
quick.
fast. It feels like longer, but you had said that to me last time, and it was exactly what I needed to hear, because I had all this like work super hard, grind type mindset, and that's all I was thinking about all the time. And even just thinking that all the time kind of stressed me out, and trying to not spend a lot of money, go make a ton of money, and this is how I'm going to grow, and I want to hit all these goals. And with the internet and everything today and social media, there's all sorts of books and people you can follow on Instagram that are entrepreneur people that just push. And that's kind of what I was in at the time. And after we talked, I remember driving home and I was like, you know what, dude? You're a damn pool man. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like you said, there's going to come a time where like you pass into the next level and you can't go back. Like, you're done. You're done with that part of your life. And I thought, I'm 29 right now. I'm still pretty young. I'm in that weird stage where it's like you're kind of still a kid, kind of growing up.
Yeah.
And that's what I decided I was going to do. And I was like, okay, I'll kind of compromise. Instead of, I wanted to hire 2 guys this year, and really just hit it hard and see what I could do. I'm like, I'm going to hire a guy and see if I can just transition into only doing tile cleans and repairs, keep the full-time guy, and just have a good time and just chill. And I go to the gas station most mornings and get myself a little Red Bull or something, which is horrible. It's probably killing me, and they're expensive. But I was like, you know what?
It's funny. Everybody knows they're awful, but shit, I'm going to go get my energy
I want a
drink.
damn Red Bull,
Yeah.
and so I'm going to get it, and I'm going to just enjoy my day.
Awesome.
Because there's so many more stressful things I could be doing all day long. Even on working for the race team, building race bikes was stressful. Like, and we worked for Honda, which means like, it's not, we're going to go try to win. It's like second place is you're getting a talking to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was kind of stressful sometimes. So this, like, there's nothing really that stressful about being a pool man unless you create the stress yourself by trying to grow or whatever. And so I'm definitely not going to grow this year like I originally wanted to, but I'm just going to kind of have a good time with it and try to grow slower and dial in the business side along the way instead of trying to do that when I have a ton of pools. And you had mentioned that, and it resonated with me. I was like, that's why we failed the first time. We grew too fast, so don't do that twice.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. And I tell my guys, and I've said this before, the best way to grow your route is to keep the accounts that you currently have.